I have been practicing medicine for more than 2 decades, and I want to start today by admitting something that took me years to say out loud. I spent the better part of my career telling patients with peripheral neuropathy that their options were limited. Prescription medications to dull the pain, physical therapy to slow the progression, lifestyle adjustments to manage what we could not cure. I said these things with confidence because that is what my training taught me, and because I genuinely believed I was giving people the best I had to offer. But there was a patient, a retired school teacher named Margaret, 67 years old, who had been living with burning, stabbing foot pain for nearly 4 years, who walked into my office one afternoon and changed the way I think about neuropathy forever. She was not walking with the cautious shuffle I had come to expect from her. She moved with ease, almost lightness. And when she sat down across from me and told me her pain had dropped from an 8 to less than a 2 in under 2 weeks, I did not believe her at first. I asked her what medication she had changed. She had not changed any. She handed me a small piece of paper with a single plant name written on it. A leaf. One that grows in gardens, sits in kitchen cabinets, and has been used for centuries, yet almost no one in conventional medicine talks about it for neuropathy. What you are about to discover in this video completely reshaped how I approach nerve pain, and I believe it will reshape something for you too. The story of how this leaf became relevant to nerve pain did not begin in a pharmaceutical laboratory or a modern research university. It began, as many of the most important medical discoveries do, with a community of people who had been suffering quietly for generations and found something that worked long before anyone could explain why. For hundreds of years, practitioners of traditional medicine across parts of Asia and the Mediterranean coast observed something consistent. People who regularly consumed or applied a particular plant experienced something unusual. Their circulation improved. Their skin became more sensitive to touch in the most restorative way. And those who suffered from what we now understand to be nerve dysfunction reported a gradual but unmistakable return of feeling, warmth, and relief where there had been numbness and fire. The plant was rosemary. Not the rosemary you might casually toss onto a roasting chicken and forget about. The specific compounds concentrated in rosemary leaves, rosmarinic acid, carnosic acid, and a handful of potent antioxidant molecules, had been doing something to human nerve tissue that nobody in modern medicine had bothered to investigate seriously until relatively recently. When researchers finally began asking the right questions, the answers they found were extraordinary. There's a reason for this, and it has everything to do with how neuropathy actually damages your nerves at the cellular level, which is not the way most doctors explain it. To understand why rosemary works, you have to picture your nervous system not as a medical diagram on a poster, but as a vast electrical wiring network running through every inch of your body. Imagine the finest, most intricate wiring system ever built. Billions of individual wires, each coated in a protective insulating layer called myelin, stretching from your spine all the way to the tips of your toes and fingers. When that wiring is healthy, signals travel instantly and accurately. You feel warmth, you feel pressure, you feel where your feet are without looking. Now imagine that same system after years of oxidative stress, elevated blood sugar, poor circulation, or inflammation has slowly eaten away at that insulating coating. The signals become distorted. Some wires fire constantly, sending pain signals when there is no injury. That burning sensation at 2 in the morning. The feeling of walking on broken glass first thing when you step out of bed. Other wires go quiet entirely, producing numbness and that terrifying loss of sensation that makes every step feel uncertain. What most conventional treatments do is interrupt the pain signal. They are essentially trying to fix the problem by cutting the alarm wire rather than repairing the insulation. Rosemary compounds, according to research published in peer-reviewed journals over the last decade, appear to do something fundamentally different. They target the oxidative damage itself, the actual erosion of the myelin layer, and support the conditions the body needs to begin rebuilding. That changes the conversation entirely. Now here is where I want to be honest with you, because this is where most people make a serious mistake. And it is the mistake that turns something genuinely powerful into something that produces no results at all. The most common error is treating rosemary the way you would treat any ordinary kitchen herb. A pinch here, a sprig there, a meal once a week. The concentrations of rosmarinic acid and carnosic acid found in casual culinary use are far too low to produce the neurological effects that research has documented. Think about it this way. If you wanted to water a garden that had been in drought for years, you would not mist it with a spray bottle once on a Tuesday. You would commit to a consistent, deliberate watering schedule that gave the soil a real chance to recover. The same logic applies here. There is also a second mistake, and this one is subtler. Many people who try rosemary for neuropathy reach for dried, commercially packaged rosemary that has been sitting in a warehouse for months, losing potency with every passing week. The volatile oils, the ones that carry the most neurologically active compounds, are among the first things to degrade when rosemary is dried and stored. What you are left with is largely flavor and very little therapeutic value. I will explain exactly what form to use and how to prepare it in just a moment, because the method genuinely matters more than most people expect. The protocol that the research points toward, and the one I now discuss with patients who are open to integrative approaches, centers on 3 specific practices used in combination. The first is a concentrated rosemary tea, made from fresh rosemary sprigs, not dried. You take approximately 3 to 4 fresh, 4-inch sprigs, rinse them thoroughly, and steep them in just boiled water for 12 to 15 minutes, with the cup covered to prevent the volatile oils from escaping with the steam. The goal is a deep, slightly resinous tea that you drink once in the morning and once in the evening. The second practice is a topical application, a rosemary-infused oil that you apply directly to the affected areas, whether that is your feet, your calves, or your hands. Research comparing groups who used topical rosemary preparations against control groups found measurable differences in local circulation and nerve conduction sensitivity, with the rosemary group showing notable improvement. To make this oil, you gently warm a carrier oil. Olive oil works beautifully for this, with fresh rosemary leaves for several hours at very low heat, then strain and store in a dark bottle. Apply it with slow, deliberate massage strokes, working from the tips of the toes upward toward the ankle, which follows the direction of lymphatic and venous flow. The third practice, and this one surprises people, is pairing the tea with a 20-minute walk outdoors within 2 hours of consumption. The reason connects to something your body cannot do without movement. What you will feel in the first 10 days is not a sudden reversal. Let me be completely transparent about that, because honesty matters more to me than a dramatic headline. The experience most people report in the first 3 to 4 days is subtle. A slight reduction in the nighttime burning, a morning in which the first steps out of bed feel marginally less like walking on shards. By days 5 through 7, if the protocol is followed consistently, the changes tend to become more noticeable. Sensitivity begins to return in areas that felt dull or numb. Some people describe it as the feeling of waking up a part of your body that had been asleep for a very long time. That pins and needles sensation that, in this context, is not alarming, but is actually a sign of returning nerve activity. By days 8 through 10, researchers and practitioners observing this progression have documented meaningful reductions in self-reported pain scores, improved balance assessments, and in some cases, a reduction in the need for over-the-counter pain management. I want you to keep something in mind, because it connects to a critical point I will share shortly. The speed of improvement is directly related to how consistently the protocol is applied, not how intensely. Nerve tissue does not respond to bursts of effort. It responds to steady, patient, repeated input over time. There are several important considerations that most sources will not mention, and one of them could make the difference between results and frustration. Rosemary contains compounds that interact with certain blood-thinning medications, including warfarin, and with some medications used for blood pressure management. This is not a reason to avoid it, but it is a reason to have a conversation with whoever manages your prescriptions before beginning. Second, if you are combining this protocol with any form of heat therapy for your neuropathy, be extremely cautious. Because neuropathy affects temperature sensation, many people cannot accurately gauge how hot a foot bath or heating pad has become, and burns in neuropathy patients are more common and more serious than most people realize. Third, and this is the piece of the puzzle that most people leave out entirely, hydration plays a remarkable and underappreciated role in nerve signaling. The electrical impulses that travel through your nerve fibers require an adequate fluid environment. Research from leading health institutions consistently links even mild chronic dehydration to worsening neuropathy symptoms, particularly in older adults who have a naturally diminished thirst response. Drink water before your morning tea, not instead of it. And if there is someone in your life who deals with nerve pain, a spouse, a sibling, a close friend, I am curious whether they have ever tried anything beyond what their doctor prescribed. Drop a 1 in the comments if you have already tried a natural approach for nerve pain, and a 2 if this is the first time you are hearing about Rosemary for neuropathy specifically. I genuinely read what you write. Here is what I want to leave you with, and I want it to land with the weight it deserves. Peripheral neuropathy affects tens of millions of people, and the majority of them have been handed a prescription and a prognosis that together say the same quiet thing: manage this because you cannot beat it. I was trained in that tradition, and I repeated it for years. But what I have seen, and what the research increasingly supports, is that the human nervous system retains a capacity for recovery that conventional medicine has historically underestimated. Rosemary is not magic. It is not a replacement for proper medical care, and anyone who tells you otherwise is not being honest with you. But it is a real, researched, biologically active intervention that works through mechanisms science has now begun to understand, reducing the oxidative burden on nerve tissue, supporting myelin integrity, improving microcirculation to the peripheral nerves, and doing this in a way that is accessible, inexpensive, and gentle enough for most people to begin immediately. Dr. Albert Winslow has come to believe, and I share this belief completely, that the most important medicine is often the kind that empowers the patient, rather than creating dependency on a system. So here is what I'm asking you to do. Not next week, not after you have thought about it more. Tonight, pick up fresh rosemary the next time you walk through a grocery store or garden center. Begin the tea tomorrow morning. Walk after you drink it. Give this 10 days, 10 deliberate, consistent days, and then come back here and tell me what changed. Your nervous system has been waiting for something to change in its environment. Give it what the research says it needs. Start tonight. The evidence is in your hands, and now, so is the choice.